France may develop new interim MBT with 140mm ASCALON on Leopard platform as MGCS slips a decade. France is advancing plans for an interim main battle tank to replace the Leclerc before the delayed main ground combat system enters service. The move aims to prevent a capability gap in heavy armor as high-intensity warfare demands faster modernization. On April 8, 2026, Armed Forces Minister Catherine Vautrin confirmed Paris is studying a CANDS-based platform paired with a French turret, likely combining a Leopard 2-derived chassis with next-generation combat systems. French officials now assess MGCS timelines as roughly a decade late, shifting focus toward a bridge solution design not as a legacy upgrade, but as an early building block of future armored warfare architecture. That statement matters because Paris is no longer treating the issue as a simple life extension problem. Vautrin said MGCS is running roughly a decade late and described the future interim vehicle as the first building block of MGCS rather than the last derivative of the old generation, with connectivity and battlefield integration central to the concept. In operational terms, France wants to avoid a period in which its armored brigades would field a modernized but aging Leclerc fleet while potential adversaries continue to harden armor, proliferate drones, and expand long-range anti-tank fires. The Leclerc XLR upgrade buys time, but not enough time to bridge the full gap on its own. CANDS says the XLR modernization addresses immediate needs in protection and communication, while intermediate requirements are to be tackled by Leclerc Evolution from 2030 onward, and the French DGA has already ordered additional renovated Leclercs to bring the XLR fleet to 200 vehicles by 2029. That improves near-term readiness and Scorpion integration, but it does not solve the post-2037 succession problem now confronting the Army. Based on what Paris has said publicly and what CANDS has already displayed, the most plausible interim French tank would combine a German-origin tracked chassis from the Leopard family with a French-designed turret and mission system. That is not yet an announced configuration, but it is the clearest industrial logic behind Vautrin's reference to a CANDS platform and French turret, and it aligns with CANDS's own roadmap, which explicitly presents the Leopard 2 ARC 3.0 and Leclerc Evolution as intermediate solutions between today's fleets and MGCS. The armament path is already visible. CANDS says both the Leopard 2 ARC 3.0 and Leclerc Evolution use modular turrets able to shift from a 120mm to a 140mm ASCALON gun, while the MBT ADT-140 demonstrator uses a remotely operated turret with a 140mm ASCALON cannon. CANDS also describes ASCALON as a more powerful, scalable weapon able to fire compact programmable ammunition beyond line of sight, with an open architecture meant to help define the future European tank gun standard under MGCS. For France, that matters because it preserves overmatched growth. A tank fielded initially with 120mm could still retain a path to 140mm lethality later. The chassis turret split would also make sense tactically. A Leopard-derived chassis would offer mature automotive architecture, payload margin for heavier protection kits and active protection systems, and a relatively low-risk route to fielding. A French turret, meanwhile, would preserve national control over the firepower architecture, electronics, and integration of effectors aligned with Scorpion doctrine. If Paris adopts an unmanned or remotely operated turret approach, as CANDS has already demonstrated, the crew could be concentrated deeper in the hull, reducing exposed volume and improving survivability against top attack threats, loitering munitions, and anti-tank guided missiles. That is an inference from the concepts already on display, but it is the most coherent answer to the lessons of Ukraine. Operationally, such a vehicle would not be just a gun tank for direct-fire duels. CANDS says the Leclerc Evolution adds a deputy commander station in the chassis to manage sensors and effectors, plus an ARX-30 remote weapon station for counter-UAV work and a loitering munition launcher. The Leopard 2 ARC 3.0 adds an unmanned turret, autoloader, 30mm secondary weapon, and anti-tank missiles. Combined with France's Scorpion networking architecture, that points to a future French heavy platform acting as a tactical command node, counter-drone asset, precision fire platform, and armored spearhead in one package. That logic also explains why MGCS remains strategically important even as Paris prepares a bridge solution. The program is no longer conceived as a single replacement tank, but as a cross-platform combat system. KNDS says MGCS is designed to replace Leopard 2 and Leclerc with a cross-platform system by 2040, while French and German officials organize the effort around 8 technological pillars with a 50-50 national workshare. Defense reporting on the 2024 Franco-German agreement shows those pillars include the platform, main gun, new weapons, communications technology, and combat cloud functions, alongside a broader push into connectivity, electronic warfare, drone integration, armor, and self-protection. The delay, however, is the product of both politics and design ambition. First, the program lost years to arguments over industrial leadership and work share before the equal share formula was stabilized in 2024 and formalized again in the MGCS project company agreement signed in Paris on January 23, 2025. Second, MGCS became more complex as it evolved from a tank replacement idea into a system of systems with manned and unmanned components. Third, France and Germany have not approached armored warfare from exactly the same operational culture, with French thinking leaning toward networked agility and German thinking retaining a strong emphasis on heavy continental warfare. The background dossier you provided highlights that divergence and the industrial tensions that followed. Finally, Vautrin explicitly linked the latest slippage to Germany's decision to pursue a Leopard 3 path, which reduced the urgency of delivering a common timeline for France. For France, then, the interim tank is becoming a strategic hedge designed to preserve sovereign armored know-how, keep the Army's heavy brigades relevant after Leclerc, and de-risk the eventual transition to MGCS by fielding mature technologies early rather than waiting for a perfect but chronically late multinational solution. That is why Paris is likely to study the industrial and tactical pathways already visible in recent analyses of the Leopard 2 ARC 3.0, Leclerc Evolution, and the MGCS project company. If the program is handled correctly, the interim tank will not dilute MGCS. It will keep France in the armored heavyweight category until MGCS finally becomes real.